What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Kumite Lifestyle Podcast. Today's guest is someone who truly embodies what martial arts is all about on and off the mat. His name is Mike Oliver. Mike is a lifelong martial artist, Isshinryu Karate black belt, dojo owner out of Sacramento, California, and a teacher who believes martial arts should create better human beings, not just better fighters. In this conversation, we dive deep into what it really means to stay a student for life. We talk about humility, ego, and why growth starts with accepting where you are before you can change where you're going. Mike shares how a single comment early in his training changed the trajectory of his life, why teaching is an art in itself, and how martial arts principles apply directly to leadership, mental resilience, and everyday life. We also get into cross-training, jiu-jitsu, community service, and how real martial arts should extend far beyond the dojo walls. This episode is about discipline, purpose, service, and connection. If you train, teach, lead, or just want to become a better version of yourself, this one's for you. Let's get into it. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Kumite Lifestyle Podcast. Today we are joined by Mike Oliver, all the way out on the West Coast, Sacramento, California. Mike, how's it going today?
Good, man. Good. It's a beautiful, foggy day in California.
That's awesome. So, anytime I have guests on from different states or regions in the United States or anywhere in the world, I always like to kind of ask, like, if someone were to go to Sacramento or your area in the world, what would be some good selling points or like some locations that you would recommend someone to check out, aside from your beautiful academy, of course, which we'll talk about.
Sacramento is an interesting place. It's kind of a hub for California. A lot of people don't think of it that way, but we've got San Francisco and the coast about an hour and a half one direction, and then the mountains and the Sierras, hour and a half another direction. We've got Napa and the vineyards and all that stuff out there too. So any of those things kind of hit home for people. It's a good spot to be able to hit all of those things.
Yeah.
In a week-long trip, you can hit a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I don't think people, unless they've been to California or unless they've been close to it, I don't think they realize how big of a state it is. Meaning,
Yeah.
I'm out here on the East Coast and I'm from Little Delaware. And when I was a kid, or like not like a little kid, but I remember being in middle school, it was social studies, and I was looking at the map of the United States because the teacher that I had, he wanted us to know where the states were and be able to spell the states and know where they're at. So I was looking at California. I said, man, the entire East Coast is the size of California.
Yeah.
So so when people say like, "Oh yeah, I live in California," and I don't think people understand just how big that is. So if you live at the north or the south, that's not like a quick, "Hey, let's get in the car and drive." So I've heard
Yeah.
people say like they have to fly within California just to get to certain spots.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not driving to Disneyland if I can avoid it. I'm flying there to
Yes.
Southern California. And it's funny because I hear folks on the East Coast like you, tournaments especially in martial arts, right? They're like, "Oh, we're driving up to Jersey, a state or two away." Like,
Yeah.
wait, you can just do that here, I guess. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, for sure. And I've had the chance to visit California quite a few times growing up. I've never been to Sacramento, but I've been more in the southern part, like LA, Torrance area for jiu-jitsu training, Grace University,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
which I know you're familiar with. And yeah, and my uncle used to live out in California before he passed, but I went out to California specifically one year, and actually before that. So Isshinryu is not new to me as far as being in California. So I don't know if you know him, but he passed away. But Master Arnold Sonderbray.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
Yep. So when he was still alive, I think it was out in Palm Desert. And I might be butchering that location, but it had Palm in it. But I was like in middle school, and my parents, because we were out visiting my uncle, every time that we would go to California from then on out, we would always try to connect with Master Sonderbray, his students. So that was pretty cool. And then in
Nice.
2011, I had a chance to connect with him again. And then I also had a chance to connect with Master Joe Jennings and got a private lesson with him as well. So yeah, so for me, California, it's not just a travel destination, it's also martial arts link based, because every time I've gone there for some type of reason, it's always been martial arts based. So it's pretty cool. And I know that, martial arts is big out there. Maybe not Isshinryu per se, at least from my understanding. So I guess that's where you come in. So have you lived in California for most of your life? Is this the state that you were born in?
Yeah, yeah. Born and raised in California, multi-generation. I mean, going back to before it was a state even. Um, yeah, I lived on the Sacramento, like on the river, literally on a houseboat when I was a baby,
Man, that's
single
awesome.
mom. And then no, it's not as awesome as it
Oh
sounds.
no. Okay. I'm
It's,
sorry.
but it was what it was.
Yeah.
Um, and then moved up to the Sierras a little bit. It's a little bit further away from Sacramento, about an hour and a half or so, kind of up in the mountains. That
Yeah.
was kind of like my teen formative years. That's actually where I started training. And then when my
Nice.
daughter was born, moved down here to Sacramento.
Nice. And forgive me for saying nice. I just heard houseboat. So that's the
Yeah,
first
it
thing I
sounds
thought of.
amazing. It's like, oh, this must be like what rich people do. No, it's more like trailer park on the water
Oh,
type of
gotcha.
situation, which they don't
Interesting.
do anymore, at least not in this area. But it
Yeah,
was
it's
pretty
interesting.
common back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting how you just said houseboat. And, for anyone that's not in that area or, familiar with what you went through as a child and like early on, it's easy how our perception of locations are kind of very different because a lot of people that have never been to California, they think it's just the glamorous Hollywood, but they don't include the 95% of the rest of the state.
Mhm.
So it
Yeah.
is interesting there. So Mike, when did you start martial arts training?
I started in 1999.
Okay.
I was fencing before that, which some people may not consider martial art. I do. I think fencing is definitely a martial art,
Hmm.
maybe on the more sport-oriented side. But I was doing that for a while. But my best friend Philip, even all through middle school, he was already training and was a black belt by the time I started training. And he's the one that brought me in one day. I always wanted to as a kid, but my mom just couldn't afford it. I saw the Karate Kid, right? Very common story. I saw
Yeah.
Daniel San. There was something about that film where when I watched it, I knew I needed that. It wasn't just the martial arts, it was the confidence, I think, especially. There's part of me that thought I kind of need that. Even at a young age, I realized I needed that.
Yeah.
But mom couldn't afford it. And then it wasn't until I was older in my teens and then eventually graduated high school that I was able to train. And I went to actually a testing day. I saw a sparring test of all things, and there were part of me that was like, I need that, and I actually thought I can do that. Like I can't do it right now, but given enough time and training, I think I have the wherewithal and the confidence to be able to do that. And then I never quit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell by your background and where you're at today that at some point, maybe it was early on that you said to yourself, maybe in just a personal conversation you had, or maybe someone telling you like, yeah, you can do this as a living, you can do this for a long time. So you talked about that you started training in the late 90s. So at what point did that realization come like, man, I can do this. Like I can make a living out of this.
It's funny when you say when somebody said something to you. I have a very distinct memory of a brown belt. She was teaching the classes at the time in EQ, Mrs. Wright. And she one day said to me, I was a yellow belt, and she said, you have such great attention to detail. You're going to make a great sensei one day.
Hmm.
And it was just one of those things that for her might have been a passing comment that she was saying to people to inspire them to keep paying attention and keep coming to class. Like I admit, like many things we say as coaches and teachers, but that one really hit home with me. And it started changing the way that I was going and why I was going to classes. I stopped listening just for learning for myself and I actually started paying a lot of attention to how the classes were being taught. Like,
Yeah.
how is this person teaching? And I still do that every time I'm training. I'm not just trying to learn the techniques. I'm trying to listen to how are they teaching and what can I learn as a teacher? And then I found the rewards in helping, assisting in classes one day.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fascinating when you said that even from an early start, you had different mentors and like the one specifically that you're talking about that you were watching more how they're teaching aside from learning what they're trying to get across. And sometimes at a certain point we might not be old enough to conceptualize what's exactly being taught to us. We just know that, hey, they want to punch, we want to kick, we want to do this or that. But for you, and I had the same mindset growing up. I think it was probably around when I was 13, 14. I would really watch how Master Rigby would teach and articulate it to the students. And again, I was just, for the version of myself at that time, I was just like, wow, it's basically you just stand in front of the room, you just give a, set of commands and people do it. But of course we know it's more than just that. So it is it is fascinating where I feel like anyone that's been a lifetime martial artist and a sensei teaching for, a long time, they usually got that early on. They saw something and said, okay, that's what I want to do. So it's kind of like aspiring to be like your mentors and senseis.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I still do it. I mean, even when I was out at the with you out in Delaware when we had the big symposium, right? Multiple schools coming together and amazing master teachers. Of course, I wanted to learn as much as I could,
Yeah.
but I was picking up things on how they're teaching it too, because I'm always trying to be the best teacher we could. I'm sure you're the same way as an instructor. You want to be the
Oh, yeah.
best teacher you can be, right? So
Yeah.
you're always picking up little things on like how they delivered their curriculum that is a fresh new way that you can bring back to your school. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I definitely admired about you, Sensei, because that was the first time that you and I had connected in person as far as meeting each other officially. Um, yeah, officially, excuse me. And yeah, so for those watching, so Sensei Oliver is not just an Isshinryu practitioner, but you also study jiu-jitsu. And when you came to the academy, our academy here in Delaware, the first thing we did wasn't Isshinryu karate, but we did jujitsu in that sense. And being a black belt in one particular art in karate that you have been, it was awesome to see that. And I might not have shown it or expressed it, but having that white belt mindset that you did, I thought that was phenomenal. And being around folks like that, it's like that's my vibe. I don't want like, I think a lot of times in this craft we see people like whether they're good or not, sometimes people, I guess they portray more than what they, lead on. And
Mm.
it takes, I guess, humility, if you will, to have that mindset. So I thought that was pretty cool. So shout out to you, Sensei, for having
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
The
And
leading cause of death of black belts is we climb up to our own tower of ego and fall off and
yeah. And we see
die.
that so often, it's a
Yeah.
shame. But I think a lot of it is they either don't have the resources to keep learning or maybe lack thereof, or they're just so into their own heads that they feel like they can't learn anymore. And then, the day you stop learning, in my opinion, is the day you die. Not literally, but your mind, your spirit has to keep going. So I know you've done Ishnu Karate. So before we kind of dive a little bit into that, let's talk about jujitsu. So, for those that are not familiar with martial arts in a sense, so in 1993, just to kind of give a very short condensed history, you had the first UFC, and then Hoist Gracie, who basically spearheaded and changed the world of martial arts, if you will. And then the whole world got introduced to jujitsu. So for you, I'm curious, when did you first get drawn into jujitsu and why do you do jujitsu today?
Well, I saw those early UFCs like any martial artist did. I wasn't training at the time though. In fact, I remember getting those VHS tapes at like the local video store. And my dad at the time, because I think I was, yeah, 13, 14, he
Yeah.
didn't think it was real. He thought it was like wrestling or something, right? So so I rented it and watched it. And then once we watched it, like, oh man, this is like these are real fights right here. You can tell right away.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I watched it then. And even though I wasn't training, I was like, well, that's cool. And I liked the concept of Hoist, who came across very humble and was wearing a gi. And I like that connection tradition, even though I wasn't training. I was like, I could see like, oh, this guy's a martial artist. Well, at least what I perceived a martial artist to be at that
Sure.
time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was already a black belt in Isshinryu karate when I got physically introduced to jiu-jitsu through a friend of mine that was training at a local school a few miles away. And he brought me by an open mat one time and I started training and went from there. I haven't like stuck with it in a consistent school long enough to
Sure.
promote or anything like that. And I'm training at a local gym with great guys, which I like that they're nobody's trying to hurt each other,
Yeah.
which is nice as an older person like me. And plus, people knowing that I have a black belt and I'm a school owner in the same city. That's sometimes that for some people it might give problems. Either they want to prove a point, they're like, hey, I can tap out the local black belt school owner,
Yeah.
or they're worried about people stealing students, right? There's all those kind of issues. These guys have all been great, so no problems at all.
Yeah, a lot of that comes just by how a school is run and how the instructors kind of leading how they want students to perceive not only the art but kind of martial arts as a sense. And you said so your best. You're in a city where you could easily just say no, I'm not going to train there because why should I? Because I'm already a black belt. So it goes back to that humbleness and that open mind that we just talked about. And yeah, I mean to do anything for the first time is can pretty
can be pretty scary. And the one thing that we can attest to, Sensei, is we never know why students step into the dojo, whether it's for self-confidence, self-defense, but we hope that they leave 1% better every time
Mhm.
they exit out. And I know for you, just the fact that you had that, I guess, that willingness to walk into another neighbor gym, if you will, and to be perceived so well by the students. And I think that's an important message for those watching, because sometimes you get athletes or students in any facet of life, I feel, and maybe they want to cross train, maybe they want to do something different, but that fear based. So what you're saying is you didn't have that at all, or when you first came in, you realized like, oh, like these guys are actually pretty cool. It's not what Reddit makes it seem to be, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't have gone to a place. I mean, I did a decent amount of research. I wouldn't have gone to a place where I thought I was going to get hurt or people weren't going to be cool about it. But it's really enjoyable for me to put on a white belt and not have the pressure. Like sometimes as a black belt when you're teaching, there's some pressure.
Yeah.
And it's nice just to go and learn. It actually felt like well, it reminded me of why I started martial arts in the first place.
Yep.
Right. So it's just an enjoyable to sit and learn and be a complete empty cup student. That's a really nice feeling to revisit that again.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've done with I train in Enshin karate also. So Isshinryu is certainly my base and my first love, and I 100% love it and teach it, but I like stepping out and learning as well some more.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to Isshinryu, when did you get your black belt?
2005, May of 2005. Yeah.
Wow, that's 2005. That's when I got my black belt.
Oh,
That's
really?
awesome. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
'cause
I figured we
I
were
had to
close to the
think
same
real quick.
generation, as
Yeah.
far as not necessarily age, but as far as like training time and
Yep.
when we got black belts. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. Like things I had to think real quick. I'm thinking, yeah, because time goes by so fast. But yeah, 2005 was also the same year. Yeah, pretty cool. And who did you get your Isshinryu black belt under?
Yeah, so I have kind of interesting story with that. I trained with the Jocelyn brothers, Ron and Dave Jocelyn, here in
Yes. Yep.
California. So you
Yep.
might know those guys.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. I know Dave. Actually, funny story before you get into yours, but I met the Jocelyn brothers for the first time. What was it? In 2001, they were in Atlanta for the Okinawan Rengokai tournament, and
Hmm.
I saw them right at the end. It was the last day, and the Masters gave an awesome demonstration, and I just remember seeing them. And how I knew them was just off the internet. I was like 11 years old. I was that kid who was like 9, 10 years old, and I would go on my mom's computer
Hmm.
before there was Facebook or anything like that, and I would email all these instructors, say, "Hey, my name is Nick Arndt. I'm a student under Master Reese Rigby," and just I would wait for like a whole day just to get that email reply. Like we'd go somewhere at night, and I'd always jump like on my mom's computer, thinking like what are you doing? Like I'm waiting for an email from this sensei. But I corresponded with the Jocelyn brothers, and then I met him officially in 2001, and then randomly, it might have been 2004, 2005. I saw them again somewhere else. I can't remember where, but and then this past Hall of Fame, I had a chance to connect with Dave Jocelyn and
Hmm.
Amanda Jocelyn. So kind
Yeah.
of just a fun fact there because I know you just mentioned them. But anyways, going back to your experience with the Jocelyn brothers, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So I trained with them with a few years, and my best friend, Philip, Sensei Philip now,
Hmm.
is the one that brought me in. And I trained there for a few years, and I got up to purple belt.
Nice.
And then there was a part of me that was kind of losing some motivation a little bit. But
Mm,
at the same time, Philip was a secondary black belt, and he was looking at starting a small school in Sacramento.
yeah.
And he kind of asked them both. He asked our senseis, "Is it okay if I take Mike away and he can help me teach and assist? I need somebody to help me out in Sacramento." And they knew we were best friends. I mean, all since middle school. So that's kind of what happened. He kind of stole me away in a way, and he also wanted to do things differently. And I think anybody that opens up a school it's like running kata. You emulate your sensei as best you can for
Yeah.
many many years. You try your best to do their kata the same. You do your kata the same way as them, but then at some point you want your own personal expression in there, right? You want to make it a little bit your own.
Yeah.
Yourself should come through the expression of the kata. And I think he was at that point with teaching too. So he wanted to roll things back, I guess, and did things a little more old school. And he just put us through our paces and kind of gave us some serious training. So I trained with him all the way up through black belt.
Okay.
I officially got my black belt from the Jocelyn. So they're the ones that signed my certificate, but a
Yeah.
lot of the the work was put in.
That no, that's awesome. So before you got your black belt and before you made that transition with your friend, what was training with the Jocelyn brothers like? So what was a typical class under them?
Typical class of the time, gosh, it was a beautiful school. They always had a great facility. Um,
Heard it was a big school too, right?
it was pretty big. When I started, there was maybe, well, the square footage wise, I want to say it was probably about 4,000 square feet
Yeah.
and had 2 floors. So it was a good sized school, maybe a couple hundred students at the time, I want to
Hmm.
say, it feels like. Um, yeah, typical class, we'd warm up, get a jog in sometimes, push ups, sit ups, squats, all that type of calisthenics.
Yeah.
Separate kata day, separate sparring days, but we either focus on kata or spar. They had a great attention to detail,
Sure.
something they've always been known for in their kata,
Yeah.
and great sparring too.
No, that's awesome.
But they produced some amazing black belts and competitors over the years. I mean, there was quite a few that traveled all over the place and did really well.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And that's it's cool to like whenever I interview people or if I'm just in conversation, I always like to ask the question like what was training like for you? Because I know it's different for everyone, but consistently, like you said, it's the hard workouts, the calisthenics, and that's the one common thing that I hear a lot with any good strong traditional martial arts school, and in this case Isshinryu. And then you mentioned about like good black belts, good students overall. So to my understanding, the Jostens are under Master Adams, correct?
Yes.
Yep. So I remember when I spoke to Master Adams at a recent tournament, he shared something that was pretty interesting. So if you go to the Ishmael Hall of Fame and you look at the pamphlet, which I know this upcoming season you're hopefully right, that's something that you guys can do. But
Yeah.
Master Adams, from what he told me, he has more students in the Hall of Fame than any other instructor. So then I said, that's interesting. So then
Mm,
I looked and I saw the Jocelyn's, I saw Sam Santilli, who else? Master Carl Martin. And I thought that was pretty profound how Master Adams' legacy kind of bleeds into his students. And then you mentioned that the Jocelyn's also had great students too. And kind of going back to what you said, Sensei, how it's we kind of emulate our instructors. So it's like it only makes
mm.
sense that you want to be as better or kind of the same level base as your instructor as far as as teaching goes. So yeah, pretty cool there. Um, now let's so you got your black belt in 2005. Did you ever like at that time did you compete or like was competing
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
yeah, so was competing in tournaments
Yeah.
something that you wanted to do or something that not like I hate to use the word forced, but did you feel obligated in a sense where maybe your senseis competed or your dojo mates competed?
It's a good question. I didn't really feel forced, definitely encouraged for sure.
Yeah.
Although there was a point where there was a point where it was shortly into my training. I think I was a yellow belt where they hosted a tournament. It was their first tournament they had hosted, at least that was large outside the dojo, open tournament. And I mean, it was kind of sad, like you guys are all competing because they wanted to get big numbers and wanted to have that full support of everyone.
Yeah.
And so I did, and I really enjoyed it. And I had been competing in fencing before. And so even though it's much different and there's physical contact in Kumite and sparring, it's different than fencing. The idea of competition wasn't new to me, competing in a sport in that one-on-one kind of environment.
Sure.
So that part of it I enjoyed too. So ever since, yeah, yellow belt and up, I was competing all the way through into black belts as well. I changed my focus around black belt as far as competition goes, but I definitely was still competing.
Very cool. That's awesome. And do you have any memorable tournaments that stand out to you? Like maybe a tournament where you enjoyed it because of the location where it's at, or a tournament where you realize like, man, I can do this. I can compete.
Most of those like tournaments I have great memories with, but a lot of my best memories of them are not on the floor competing. It's before or after. It's
Yes.
hanging out with people, learning with
Yep.
other instructors.
Yep.
All that stuff was amazing. Just that bonding experience, whether I was a yellow belt in the van, riding with everybody, the 3 hour drive to the tournaments, and the hotel stays, all that stuff.
Yeah.
All the way to later, I've got some great memories when I made the transition from point fighting to doing more full contact fighting, like Kyokushin style fighting. That was a significant change and kind of an eye opener for me,
Yeah.
because it's a much different style of competition.
Yeah. So
I got some great memories for that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to hear about your Kokushin stories because I've only seen it on YouTube and maybe conversations with folks I've had like yourself, but I what is Kokushin and how does that differ from a traditional art like Isshinryu karate?
Well, I don't train in Kyokushin, so I can't speak for that style itself, but the
Sure.
tournaments are pretty standard as far as the full contact tournament style.
Yeah.
And so that's a little different because instead of whereas in an open point fighting tournament, whether it's WKF or AEU or just a general open style like NASCA style tournament, Kumite is very much like it's kind of a game of tag. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but
Yeah.
it's you have to be fast, sharp, precise, amazing distance management. It's an amazing tool for all those things.
Yeah.
Whereas in whether it's continuous sparring or anything full contact, you have to be precise, sharp, but also you have to be really resilient and kind of tough to be
Yeah.
able to stick through it. And especially if you're fighting multiple fights in the same day potentially as well. So a little bit
Yeah.
different mindset.
Yeah,
And the rule
absolutely.
set, of course, is different. You're not punching to the head, so there that is considerably different too.
Yeah, so that's interesting you said that. So you can't punch to the head, but can you kick to the head?
Absolutely, yeah. You can kick a knee to the head, full contact. Yeah,
Like make it make sense. I don't get that. You
I get
know?
it. I think with competition, and we could probably really get into this, but the
Sure.
rule set determines, well, if you are creating a rule set, if you're crafting a rule set, I would like to think that the person doing it has intention in mind of this is why we are selecting the rules that we do.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're unintended consequences, right? And you see it in point fighting, where in the earlier point fighting days, things are a little bit more sharp and precise. And the techniques, at least, that would score would be techniques that you would think would end a fight. And then over time, in some tournaments, it got sloppier and sloppier with like the open hand flying back fists and stuff, right? That would
Yeah.
still cause a point. It's unintended consequence. They probably didn't perceive that a martial artist would do those things.
Yeah.
And I think, I could be wrong, but I think I would like to think that the intent of the Kyokushin format is not just to show who the better fighter is, who the best martial art is to test the fighting spirit of the competitors.
Sure.
And to test the fighting spirit of the competitors, if you're allowing punches to the face, the fight's going to end from bleeding really quickly because it's bare knuckle. So you're not going to be able to get that test of spirit with a fight that ends from a punch in the nose in 30 seconds or
Yeah.
5 seconds potentially.
I
But you
agree.
can if you're allowed to punch to the body and kick to the body at full contact. And then that kick to the head is a little harder to land too, because they just don't happen as often, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like you're saying beforehand, before you explained that, which thank you for that. It's just the mindset, the rule sets. That's what kind of differs, obviously, and then with that just comes a preparation. I remember
Yeah.
when I was training with the AAU, Coach Jim O'Hara. So shout out to him. He was the head coach at the time, and he was saying that the philosophy of competing is pretty simple, right? Just go out there and win. But the difference is like how do you train for it? It really is the mindset and just to kind of touch on point fighting and the whole kumite itself, and I think this is also a good topic of interest as well, just so people get a better understanding of what point fighting is, because a lot of times, and sometimes we even have to add ourselves into this equation where you watch people spar, it's kind of like a game of tag, and then if like even if you watch the highest levels of the WKF fighters, which obviously they're phenomenal athletes in their own right, but it is just a lot of back and forth. And I've heard comments say like, oh, like they're not even fighting. It's just like they're just like basically running around a square. And to some logic and some like, I mean, like perspective based, that is kind of what it's happening, but it's more than just that. And Sensei
Hmm.
Steele explained it one time to the class best. He said, if you and I are fighting, and if you get 5 points first, you win, or whoever gets the most points at the end wins. Let's say it's 2 minutes. Now, the issue is if you and I are fighting and you score a point, right? That point, potentially could have been life threatening, meaning like if you hit me just right. So then you get a point and then I get a point. And let's say at the end you win 5-4. Great, you win. However, I hit you 4 times, but you also
Yeah.
hit me 5 times. But at any point, those strikes could have been fight changing. So when you watch the UFC and someone gets clipped, that's the difference. So this game of tag isn't real fighting in a sense. I mean, yes, you can train for it, and there are some good mindsets and principles behind it, but I sometimes struggle Mike, where I have a hard time explaining that to the average consumer because they're like, "Oh, you guys aren't even fighting. It's not UFC." It's like, "Yeah, yeah, like it's not UFC, but there's, strategy behind it. There's, assertiveness." So, do you ever struggle explaining that to even people that watch it, but they don't really understand it?
No, because I don't try anymore. I just we don't really do much point fighting anymore. I mean, we keep everything light and controlled in the dojo, of course, because nobody wants to be. You can't spar full contact every
Sure,
day,
sure.
but we keep it light and controlled. But we're doing continuous with grappling. I mean, we just kind of put the point fighting aside
Yeah.
and just don't really do it anymore. So
Too much stop and go, too much stop and go. So,
yeah, I just over time, it's just how I've changed as a martial artist. I don't want to say bad things about point fighting because, like you said, the distance management is such a key component of point fighting, and it's why I think some of the best karate fighters in the UFC and MMA are kind of known for their distance management, right?
yeah.
And they're not just standing in there banging; they have great control of the mai of the space,
Yeah. I
and it's
mean,
because all those years of training, and you can't do that quickly. It takes a lot of time for most people to develop that concept of mai and space and control.
yeah. Yep, and also getting those reflexes too. And you mentioned
Yeah.
like the UFC fighters, like take someone like Lyoto Machida or George St. Pierre, they come from a very strong traditional background. And this can even equivalate to like the everyday fighter now, where anyone on the roster, to my understanding, they should, if they don't, have some type of jiu-jitsu background. Like some of the
Mhm.
best fighters in the world that are fighting in the octagon are black belts in karate on top of their striking art. So you take someone like Donald Cerrone, who's an amazing striker and a black belt. He's not afraid to bang and strike because he knows that if the fight goes to the ground, his jiu-jitsu is going to, take over and he'll be fine. But if you look at a boxer, right, who's amazing striking, of course, different mindset, different rule sets, but you put them in the octagon and you take them away from their main element, they're not going to strike as efficient because they're going to be scared of getting taken down. And of course, vice versa. If you don't know, um, like if you don't know striking either, so it's important to be well rounded. And the overall thing that I'm learning from you is that you have that and you teach that to your students because you said continuous fighting with the grappling. So I'm curious, how much grappling base do you teach to your Isshinryu students, Mike?
So I've had students compete in the Sabaki Challenge, the Junior Sabaki Challenge, which allows some grabbing. It's like Kyokushin type of rule set, but with grabbing and sweeping allowed too.
Sure.
So more of judo elements, which that's kind of a huge game changer in and of itself. And then when you add in grappling as well, that's another huge game changer. So yeah, we do. I wouldn't say we do a lot, but we do maybe 10% of our curriculum is a fair amount to say we do some grappling.
Yeah.
So it's not a lot, but I like to share just enough to where they're not feeling like they're drowning if they end up on the ground. They know a little bit about what to do.
Yeah, I love that because I mean, we see it often, I mean, karate schools or even any type of standing art. And again, it could go both ways. You could take a ground fighter and if they've never been exposed to punches, right? It can
Hmm.
change. So just being well-rounded, I think that's an awesome concept as an instructor and you're providing your students with more than just a service. It's like this is a life skill that you can take with you. So even if you're just practicing it in the dojo, understand that like as an instructor, I'm sure you would agree, like you want your students to leave knowing that if it hits the fan, like they're going to be all right because they've been exposed to it, in training. So, um, what's a typical week like for you? So I know you own the school in Sacramento, and something that I always love, learning from other martial arts head owners is basically what's a typical day life and like what are some of the challenges that you face as a school owner?
It's 6 days a week. I mean, our dojo is open 6 days a week. We're a full time dojo, Monday through Saturday. I get to the dojo around noon, maybe one. Do the administrative work and then staff training as well.
Yeah,
And then we hit the floor at 3:50, and my staff and I teach classes from 3:30, 3:50 until about 8 o'clock at night.
nice.
So pretty normal for most dojos as far as
Yeah,
that goes. Yeah.
yeah. No, that's awesome. And I know you mentioned that you come in for the logistics and everything else
Mhm.
that encompasses aside from training because when people walk into the dojos or academies they think like oh like you're just teaching like that's an easy job but they don't realize everything else that happens on the back end so so aside from teaching what do you do that's maybe different than like a different or like another school down the road as far as marketing or, getting your basically your brand out there?
A huge part of what we do and why I opened the dojo was I had two primary goals in starting a school. I wanted to raise what I thought was some lowering, or at least a perception of lowered standards of what it means to be a black belt in karate. So I wanted to raise that up a little bit. In addition to that, I wanted to take all these things that we talk about in a dojo, like respect, courtesy, kindness, especially service, and take it out of the dojo and into the world.
Yeah,
One of my mentors is Tom Kalos. He's a huge reason of why the dojo exists. I don't know if you're familiar with Tom.
I'm not,
He's a
unfortunately.
California, let's see, West Coast Taekwondo, like Ernie Reyes Taekwondo black belt.
Okay.
So out on their school, he was BJ Penn's first teacher out in Hawaii. His son is actually, you might know his son is pretty famous in the jiu-jitsu world, Keenan Cornelius in the
Yeah,
competitive world anyway. Yeah, that's
absolutely.
Tom's son.
Yep, I know
So
Keenan.
Tom anyway did a lot of martial arts consulting in the 90s. And then I was chatting with him, asking him questions, and I found out he was living in Sacramento. So I'm like, oh man, we got to connect.
Yeah,
I learned so much from him. And the main thing I learned, because I had experiences in previous schools that I trained at, where there were some things I just didn't appreciate, that I thought maybe the marketing was not what I would want to do, and the way some of the things that were done in the school were done. Marketing in particular always seemed kind of cheesy to me, the way some schools do it.
yeah,
He told me like, Mike, you don't have to do that stuff. You just have to teach good, authentic karate and then share your stories and go out in the community and do great things.
yeah,
And so he kind of coached and walked me through how to do that. And a big thing that we do is community service work. So at different belt levels, we'll require students to demonstrate kindness and compassion in the community by organizing a community project of their choice. Whether they're 4 years old or 54 years old, they're doing some work out there.
no, that's awesome. And going back to what you said earlier about just always learning and taking advice or kind of learning from either you see something on social media or just how people brand things and say to yourself, yeah, it's cool, but um it's not how I
Mhm.
want to do it. And the most important thing that I've learned growing up is I like word of mouth is probably the best form of advertisement, you know? So when people come and they say, yeah, I had a great time at Sensei Oliver's dojo, because people will do what people like them are doing. And, you know, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, and I think that's such a powerful statement that I live by, something that, was taught to me. So it's not, so I didn't just make this up out of thin air, but I love to
Mhm.
share that concept. And when, like-minded individuals like yourself share that, and it's like, wow, it's like, it's cool that what I do my best to share or convey martial arts, other people are doing the same thing, and I think that's why when we connected, it was almost instant, it was a good time training. And I remember when you were doing your seminar bit, um, yeah, your portion, I mean, I asked if I could be your Uki, and I thought that was a, really cool experience too, like a West Coast, East Coast kind of collab there.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciated it. I had a really great time out there with you. You were so welcoming. Of course, Sensei Steel. Also, I should shout out Charlie and Zach too. Just going out there from California all the way to the East Coast, just
Yeah,
having those guys to hang out with, and then they drove me places. I mean, they really made me feel like part of the East Coast crew.
yeah,
And Isshinryu is sort of isolated out here in California. There's not a lot of us, and it's such a huge state.
yeah.
I want to say there's maybe 5 or 6 dojo that are really active, solid in California. There's not many at all. And
Only
that for
five. Wow.
that I know of. I mean, it's such a large state. Certainly, Northern California, there's maybe there's three maybe in the top half of California, and I'm one of them.
Yeah.
So we're pretty isolated out here. So when I go out to the East Coast and you've got like Isshinryu just all over the place, it's such a different experience. And I hear people telling stories how they train at they visited this dojo and this one and this one and this one and this one, and like I got one other school I could visit. that's,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, it's almost like, yeah, it must be nice, But no, it's just opportunities that were taken and given, for, at any given point. But it really goes back to so a little history buff here for those that don't know. So Isshinryu is a style, Okinawan style, and if I can kind of condense it, but it's made up of Shorin-ryu and Goju-ryu. And then in the early 60s and 70s, you had these Marines and these servicemen that would train with Master Tatsuya Shimabuku, the founder of Isshinryu. And then when they came back, I feel like a lot of it really depended on where those first generation students landed. And most
Yeah.
of them, to my understanding, landed somewhere on the East Coast, which is why you see more of a growth of dojos, if you will, on this side of the coast than you do out west. But wasn't Steve Armstrong out on the West
Mhm.
Coast though?
He was out in Washington,
Yeah.
up in Seattle area. Yeah. And
So
there,
I
I know
guess
they have some schools up there.
they do. Okay, okay. So West Coast has a sense there are other Isshinryu schools aside from the few in California.
Yeah. Yeah. But that Washington school is, that's like I don't know, 18-hour drive
Yeah,
here, so it's a bit far.
sure, absolutely. But
You guys haven't made out there for a community. But it
yeah,
is cool though being a part of the OIKKA. It's this for those that don't know, like karate organization. So being a part of Kaicho Chase's organization, we have that community still, and I'm able to visit other schools, and I'm hoping to get out to the East Coast more to hang and train with you guys.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You and your students, your family are always welcome here at our
Cool.
academy. And you said something that was pretty cool when you were out here, just a connection, kind of like that brotherhood when you were talking about Sensei Charlie, who I just
Yeah.
had on the podcast recently. And yeah, just awesome human beings. And so you mentioned the OIKKA, which is, again, for those watching, the Okinawan Isshinryu Karate Kobudo Association, an organization founded by the late Grandmaster Uezu and then passed on to Master Chris Chase. So, what became like, how did that connection start with the organization and your relationship with Master Chris Chase?
I had connected with him, maybe similar to your stories of just emailing different people, right? So we
Yep.
had connected on social media, and I was asking him some questions, mostly like history based
Yeah.
questions that I wouldn't have known about Master Uezu and Okinawa in particular. I was really interested in Okinawa culture and learning some more, and I know that he had been multiple times, and so asking some of those questions, and every once in a while I throw him like, I got this question about this section of kata that I don't, tell me more about this. And he was always so friendly and welcoming with sharing information, even though I wasn't his student. He would say things like, well, this is how I do it. This is what we do. This is what Sensei Uezu taught me. And then when I kind of had a falling out, I guess we could say, for lack of a better term, with my sensei, just
Yeah.
kind of move on. Um, it was a couple years I wasn't training really, I was just doing my own thing. And then I
Yeah.
reached out to him, and over time I brought him out for a seminar. And once we met in person, kind of just felt like a good fit.
Yeah.
And he welcomed me into the association, so that was really cool.
No, that's awesome. And I remember just to piggyback off that, that connection, I think it was 2017, 2018. You were at the New Jersey tournament, right?
Yes. Yep.
It was the OIKKA World Championships, and
Yeah.
I was at that same event as well, and just to see the organization kind of in its what's the word, kind of highlighting how amazing that collaboration is, because it's always cool when you see a lot of the same folks in your group or association get together, excuse me. And Isshinryu, it's there's good Isshinryu and there's bad Isshinryu, and I'm just
Mhm.
gonna say that, and that just comes from years of watching competition and being around different practitioners, and they're all nice people in their own right. So I'm not dissing them on that, but when we're talking about the art itself, and you have a good eye for talent, you see what's good and what's not, and just to give a little shout out to our association, when you go to the Hall of Fame, the Isshinryu Hall of Fame, usually the ones that win the katas are from our association. So there's no secret, it's the
Mhm.
tradition. It's just that strong foundation that, of course, that we've grown up on. So no, that's cool that you've felt
Yeah.
comfortable enough to become, part of the OIKKA. And now your
My kata's
school's,
improved considerably for sure.
yeah.
For through Kaicho's guidance, absolutely.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
going to ask because I remember when Master Rigby a long time ago made that transition in the mid 80s to Master Uezu, he had to make some changes too. And
Mhm.
again, going back to what you said a while back, early in the show, just being that just that constant state of learning, right?
Yeah.
Or the Shoshin mindset. Was that tough for you though? Because you've been doing something for a long time and then having to like, okay, I guess not I guess, but I'm gonna have to make changes if I
Yeah.
really want to believe in this not system, but this association, if you will. So talk us through that, Mike, and what was that learning process like for you, and what did you ultimately learn about yourself?
I think you know, I think as martial artists, we learn to accept change, or not change. We learn to accept the state of things quickly because you have to in a fight. You
Yeah.
have to just sort of accept, like, this is where I'm at. I'm
Yeah.
getting punched right now, or I'm getting kicked, or this is the position this opponent has on me. You have to first accept that before you can make a change, right? And a lot of people, whether it's on the mat or in life, get stuck trying to resist how things currently are, which of course keeps them from never able to make a change because you can't orient yourself to where things currently are. So you have
Yeah.
to just accept the state of things, whether you like them or not. And it was easy for me because I liked the changes because they made sense. So Kaicho is really great at explaining here's why you're going to do this differently and why we think it's better.
Yeah.
And it physically felt better. On a conceptual scale, it felt like an improvement. And having that connection to history as well was huge
Yeah.
for me too, knowing that we have a kata system that's been passed down for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, accepting it and just not even worrying about it. I just stopped doing it the old way as
Yeah.
best I could and started doing it the new way. I didn't try to fight it at all. I just made that cutoff point.
Yeah. And with that, I'm sure you didn't realize the abundance of support and just kind of the aftermath of being a part of a new association. And like you said,
Mhm.
just that collaboration, if you will. And you said something about your tournaments that I meant to also mention it as well. But when you go to tournaments, and you're right, we don't remember the competitions themselves, but we remember the road trips, the experiences, and just the meeting of people, and how that ties into what you're talking about now. When you join the association, you got that again, especially when you came out here
Mhm.
to the East Coast. So yeah,
Yeah,
pretty cool.
and all the opportunities. I mean, being able to go to Okinawa too with Kaicho, and that was just an amazing experience that
You went to Okinawa. Oh
I
man, so
did. Yeah.
tell us about that. What was that like?
Yeah, so we went in October of last year, and the plan was originally to, of course, meet Grandmaster Weizu and visit him, but the timing was really rough. We weren't even sure if the trip was going to continue because of the timing of it all, because he
Yeah,
had passed away just a month and a half, 2 months prior or so, right?
yeah,
We weren't sure how that was going to happen, and I didn't know if people are going to be comfortable going,
sure,
But so it changed the nature of the trip. It went from we still had fun, but a lot of that, I think, especially for Kaicho, it's his sensei, right? And I
sure.
try to put myself in his shoes if my sensei had passed, how I would feel, especially so soon afterwards. And then all these memories have to have been flooding back. And it was great to be able to kind of experience Okinawa through his eyes and
Yeah,
him being able to share memories that he had with Grandmaster Weizu. And hey, I was right here, and he told me about this story about this tree. Like there's one point where he's telling me about these trees and stories that he heard. And I thought, man, this is just really cool to have this experience, to have it passed down.
yeah. Like Master Chris Chase, shout out to him. He is such a wealth of knowledge, and being able to go to Okinawa, I'm sure had to be amazing in itself. Whether you're there for business or pleasure, but in this case, I'm sure it's a little bit of both. But
And somebody that knows decent Japanese enough to help us get around too was
yeah,
very helpful.
yeah, and I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. And it's not for me to say that just based on my own observation, if you will, my own connection with him, both professionally and both on and off the dojo floor. But yeah, he's like Master Chase has a really, really strong grounded roots in Isshinryu, even from his time way back in the 70s when he was training with Master Jennings, and then of course that connection with Yoezu. So it's always been strong. It's always been there, and we're very fortunate to have him kind of spearheading our association along with everyone else. We have such an amazing cadre of instructors, right? Yourself
100%.
included, and just it's nice when we all come together, and I'm excited for what the future of the association and just Isshinryu in itself has to bring. Um, so, Mike, before we close out, what are some upcoming goals you have for not only yourself but for your dojo and yeah, and your students?
Yeah. We're just going to keep on kicking. And we have some goals to try to grow a little bit. We have the One Heart Challenge is something that we do. It's kind of adapted from Tom's Ultimate Black Belt test.
Yeah, talk to me about
So,
that because you had mentioned that when we were texting initially. So I'd love for you to be able to kind of share that if you don't mind.
of course, yeah, the Ultimate Black Belt test was something that Tom started, and it was the idea of if you get some of the best black belts from across the country together, across the world even, let's say 100 of us, what would the ultimate black belt test look like? whether we're black, I mean, we're black belts, but what would the ultimate black belt test look like? And then also he wanted to see what could we ultimately do in the world to make actual significant change. If you have these powerhouses of change in the martial arts, what can you do to affect the communities? So we did things like a house build. We went to the poorest county in the U.S. to Hale, Alabama, and did a house build out there. Trained as well, but it was like a great way to train, but also do community service work too. So anyway, I did this ultimate black belt test for a couple of years, where the challenge is to do things like 50,000 push-ups and sit-ups over the course of the year. You run 1,000 miles, you do 1,000 reps of a form, you do 1,000 rounds of sparring. You got to get some grappling time into 1,000 acts of kindness. Just all read multiple books, write. You're doing a lot for the year. You live in like an ultimate black belt life for a year. When I started doing it, I challenged some of my students, hey, if you want to do it with me, it would be really helpful and supportive if you could do some of these with me. So let's do these push-ups together. Let's do these sit-ups together, run with me together. And I made it, one of my black belts wanted to do it. She did amazing with it. She did the whole thing, completed it, and we made it a part of our dojo. So all of our black belts do basically this same test. So this is the first year we've invited some people from outside of our school to do it too. So we have some other Isshinryu students doing it also.
Yeah.
We have a website, it's oneheartchallenge.com, and you can follow the same kind of program and path that our students are doing. And it's just a cool thing to share with the greater community and have a team of people doing this really challenging lifestyle challenge.
No, that's awesome. And I love that you said something where, as you're explaining that, you also encourage your students to do it with you. And
Oh yeah.
when you're doing it alongside your students and vice versa, your students see you doing it as their instructor, that says a lot, because it's one thing to say, hey, do this, do that. But when you do it with them, because what's the saying? If you want to go fast, do it alone. But if you want to go far, or
Mhm.
I think you know what I mean. The things I'm
Yeah.
totally butchering that, but thing is, I already well, no, because someone said to me yesterday, I said, "Oh yeah, that's right," and then I'm gonna remember it as soon as we log off. But yeah, so there's amazing quotes, and like you said, kind of just living that black belt lifestyle because you don't earn a black belt, you become a black belt, and I like truly believe that something that you like when someone straps that belt on you, in any belt really, you graduate to that belt just by a combination of time and service, if you will. And black belt especially, it kind of irks me, man, when people get their black belt and they just quit. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
just quit. Not because they're moving, not because they're going to college, which I understand that life comes up, but just to quit, like you got that far. But again, I've had to learn that everyone's journey is different. There's seasons of life, and as instructors, we see students come and go all the time. Some of us sometimes are there for a short time, sometimes are there for the long time. So I have to remember that everyone's journey is different. So I don't get too upset about it, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't think you understood the whole concept of it.
Yeah.
But,
That's
but
important though, to be able to meet your students halfway with that mindset, right?
yeah.
It reminds me of that story. You probably have heard this too, and I may get some details wrong, but there's a time where Tatsuo Shimabuku, from what I understand, was doing, it was either a demonstration and maybe the local press came to his dojo and they asked him, they saw already trained and they asked, well, who's your best fighter? Who's your best student?
Yeah.
And he thought about it for a moment and he looked at the floor and he eventually said, well, these are all my best ones because they're the ones that are here.
Hmm.
And that reminds me to tell myself that the people that are supposed to be here are here. The ones that have moved on, they've moved on. But I need to put my time into these ones that are here
Yeah.
and help them become the best version of themselves that they can, so that I can also be the best version of myself that I can be. And we're all doing this together. And it reminds you the community is the important thing
Yeah.
in karate, I think.
Absolutely. And in life just itself. But in this
Yeah.
case, it's like we don't have to do karate, but we get to. And we don't have to teach, but we get to teach. And I think that's
Yes.
it's a very special privilege, something that I don't take lightly, and I know you don't either. So pretty cool.
We're very
Um,
blessed and lucky. We're very, very lucky to be able
oh
to do
yeah.
this, man.
Oh yeah.
And there's not a lot of people that do. There's a lot of people that maybe teach 1 or 2 classes a week, right? Not a lot of people are like you and I that are teaching as a profession full time. That's a very small number of people across the world.
Yeah, and I've learned that because when I was training with Master Rigby, because he did it full time, with his wife, Mrs. Judy Rigby, and that was just kind of my perception of martial arts school is like, hey, like I'd pass a taekwondo school or any school growing up. I said, oh, that's pretty cool that person can do that. But I've learned quickly that's not the case. Sensei Steele, I mean, he's a full time owner now, but there was a long period of time where he was working another job and then coming to the dojo. So there's a lot of sacrifices there, but yeah, yeah, definitely blessed, like you said, and grateful every single day to be able to share what we do. Sensei, before we close out, I always like to give my guests the opportunity to give any shout outs to anyone that comes to mind. It can be anyone, not just martial artists, but who would you like to give thanks to?
Well, my family for sure. I mean, my wife is huge because she holds the house together while I'm doing all this work. Takes care of our daughter when I'm gone. I mean, she puts in just all those, just like I'm putting in countless hours here, she's putting in the countless hours there and helping me succeed in so many ways. From something as simple as fixing my embroidery and my gi today to all the other countless things she does. So that'd be number one. Probably all the people that were influential in making the school happen too. My Tom Callos was huge. I wouldn't have, of course, been in Crow without the Jocelyn's. I learned so much from them, and I learned how to teach efficiently because I taught for them professionally for a couple of years too. So being in a school of 250 to 400 students at one point and
Yeah,
running those classes all day, you just learn how to teach efficiently and run a good program
yeah.
and do it well. So that was huge. And then also Kaicho Chase as well for all the support over the years. And my friend Philip too, Philip DeBoard for putting me through the paces and kind of sharing the spirit of Isshinryu karate in a strong way.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, for those watching, this was Sensei Mike Oliver, and Sensei really dove into his time training early on in the late 90s and then kind of exploring why he enjoyed martial arts and a little bit of the ups and downs and talked about when you got your black belt, which I thought was cool. And then you sprinkled in the idea of cross training in jiu-jitsu and like every other enthusiast watching those VHS in the 90s, which was such an incredible time. I missed the 90s every day. And like I was a kid in the 90s, but I just felt like life was so much more simpler. But that's a topic for a whole nother day.
Yeah.
But yeah, just really kind of getting more understanding of your vision and where you're at now. And, I can just tell based on where you're sitting, how much passion you have for the martial arts, your dojo, and of course the community that you've helped raise and, and they're continuing to give back to you as well. So, Sensei, thank you so much for your time today. And where can people find you if they're on social media or if they're in the Sacramento area? What's the best way for anyone who's watching this to get in touch with you and to know, I guess, more about you?
Yeah, I'm easy to find on Facebook, Instagram. Search for Mike Oliver on Facebook or Zen Martial Arts, Zen Martial Arts on Instagram. Will all get to me. ZenMartial.com is our website, so you'll find me. But I'm always happy to. I mean, I really enjoy connecting with other martial artists. So if you want to just shoot out a message and just chat or ask questions, absolutely, 100%, it'd be fun.
Absolutely. All right, well, folks, there you have it. So today's guest was Mike Oliver, all the way from Sacramento. Mike, it was an honor to have you on the Kumite Lifestyle Podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Sensei. Bye bye.
Yep, see ya.